election as well. Now we move on to North America. U.S. President Donald Trump has told reporters that he will be pushing forward with plans to deploy troops to Portland and Chicago, despite a federal judge's order blocking him from deploying 200 Oregon National Guard troops to the city of Portland. The ruling by U.S. District Judge Karen Immergut in Portland is a setback for Trump as he seeks to dispatch up the military to cities he describes as lawless over the objections of their Democratic leaders. Immergut, who was appointed by Trump during his first term, blocked the Trump from sending troops at least until October 18th, saying there was no evidence that recent protests rose to the level of rebellion or seriously interfered with law enforcement. Trump has already sent the National Guard to police Los Angeles and Washington, D.C., and has said that he would send troops to several other cities. Earlier, Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker, a Democrat, has said that in a social media post that Trump was preparing to send 300 National Guard troops to Chicago. Now for this discussion, we go back to Ross Feingold. He's a political analyst, joins us live from Taipei. Thank you, Ross, for staying with us. Now, what's your reaction about this news that has just come in that President Trump has expressed his intent to deploy more troops to Portland and Chicago despite the federal court's ruling? Ross, you might be muted here. Ross, we couldn't hear you. Could you repeat that answer? Thank you.
Sure. President Trump views this as an effective tool against crime, and he also views it as an effective political tool as well to show the American public that he is tough on crime. And the half of America that voted for Trump and the Republican governors around the country who are aligned with Trump, they'll generally support him. And obviously, there are going to be mayors of these cities who are Democrats. There are going to be governors of those states who are Democrats. And they're going to object and they're going to try and litigate this. But even though some court decisions have come out against President Trump in this regard, he's also successfully deployed troops. We saw that in California. So if these things get up to the Supreme Court with its 6-3 conservative majority, it's highly likely that the Supreme Court would rule in favor of the Trump administration. So frankly, there isn't much downside for President Trump to keep pushing this initiative. And if he loses in the courts, so be it. But chances are he might very well win. And he'll get to say that he was tough on crime.
And what potential legal or political consequences could arise from President Trump's actions?
Well, the political consequence would be if he ultimately loses in the courts. But again, I think that's unlikely at the Supreme Court level. It would be embarrassing because the courts would be saying that the administration's interpretation of applicable law was incorrect. But the likelihood of that happening is really low. Now, legally, there could be litigation about the costs of these deployments. If people are arrested or injured by the deployed National Guard troops, they might try to bring legal action against the federal government, though that's very, very difficult to do in the American legal system. But frankly, those are all relatively small risks. There's not much downside for President Trump to continue to pursue this.
And also, given Judge Karen Immergut's ruling blocking the deployment, and the fact that he was appointed by Trump 1.0. So what does this decision reveal about the checks and balances in the relationship between the executive and judiciary branches of U.S. government?
Yeah, we probably don't have enough to measure that by. What I mean is, yes, it's a Trump-appointed judge that issued an unfavorable ruling for the Trump administration. But I think for the most part, Trump-appointed judges are going to rule in favor of the Trump administration, just like Obama or Biden-appointed judges tend to rule against the administration. Ideally, the courts would be ideologically blind, but that's just not the reality. We know that. We know judges, when they're appointed to the federal courts, come from a ideological background. They're either progressives or they're conservatives. and they make their rulings accordingly. So sometimes there's a bit of luck involved because when you're brought into court, it's the luck of the draw what judge you're going to get. You might get a Democrat appointed judge or you might get a Republican appointed judge.
And what do you think about the fact that now the U.S. government is in shutdown? The Jeffrey Epstein file discussion is still ongoing, and then now this. What do you think is the broader impact of this news?
Ultimately, this all links up with the midterm election, which is just a little bit over a year from now, at the beginning of November 2026. So the intense or hyper partisanship that already exists in the United States, that's going to get even worse. We're going to see battles over spending that will extend into next year, no matter how the current impasse is resolved. Not much will get done in the Congress next year because of the upcoming midterm. And the administration is going to try and exercise as much executive authority as it can. And that might result in more lawsuits by public interest organizations that try to stop the White House and say that it's overreaching or violating laws passed by Congress. But we certainly are going to have an upcoming 13 months of very, very intense partisanship in the U.S.
And what do you think, what is the broader impact of deploying military forces to civilian areas like Portland, Chicago, and others, especially in terms of public trust in law enforcement?
I think it's too early to tell. There's been the deployments in California and Washington, D.C. There are people who oppose it. There are people who favor it. Fortunately, there's only been limited incidents involving these National Guard troops during the deployments and members of the public. It would be a very different conversation if there was to be serious injury or even death caused by a member of the National Guard during one of these deployments. Let's hope that something like that never occurs because that would be a tragedy. But I think to really measure the long-term effect or what it means for various institutions like the military or civilian law enforcement, it's probably too early to tell.
Right. With that, I would like to thank Ross Feingold for joining us and sharing your insight as a political analyst. Thank you so much. Now we move on to Europe. French woman Gisèle Pelicot